button am I supposed to push to vote? Which one? All right, sorry about that. The City Council, City Manager Work Session in order with all members present. Good to see everybody this evening. So, League of Oregon Cities Legislative Priorities. Is that you, Byron?
It is, thank you. So this is a biennial process to take a look at what the League's priorities are as far as advocating in the legislature on behalf of all the cities in Oregon. And this year, it was a shorter list than the last time we did this. So there was only 26 items submitted through the committees, the policy committees that the League has. And during the session, I want to talk through all 26 of them. We can just, a lot of them won't necessarily have a lot of discussion, but I'd be happy to hear some of your thoughts. And then we have on the agenda as an action item later to choose 4 items to recommend to the League. And then they'll take the results of this information throughout the state and then come up with 4. The League Board will put together a recommended package. I think last time it didn't quite end up with 4, but some package of issues to make priorities as the League staff works at the legislature. So as I took a look at all of these and the staff, we went through them, there were 2 that stood out to me as probably more important to Hermiston than any others. And those were item A and item U, and I'll kind of talk through those as I get there. Those both have to do with revenues. And so the first one, item A, is an increase to the beer and cider tax. So the state taxes beer and cider, and they also prohibit cities from a tax on alcohol. And with that prohibition, we receive about 34% of the alcohol revenues come back to cities. And they are a significant portion of our budget and assist a lot in the general fund. And the current rate was for beer and cider was set in 1978, and it hasn't been increased since then. And it's measured in a weird way. So it's measured $2.60 per barrel, which comes out to be about 8 cents on a gallon and less than 5 cents for a 6-pack. So not a lot of impact right at that point. Now, that rate's the lowest in the country, and the League just put together as an example, if we went to the middle of everybody up in the states, it would have to go to $30 per barrel. So we are a long ways from where everyone else is in the country. And so getting some sort of an increase would be a help to cities. And we continue to struggle with property taxes being our main source of revenue and being hamstrung by a number of things. Now this is a way that could get us some more general fund revenue as cities that isn't as difficult to do as changing the property tax. So I felt this is a really important item that the League got to really focus on. The next item, item B, is broadband infrastructure and technical assistance funding. So broadband, telecommunications, during this COVID time, I think we found out that maybe we don't have quite as good a broadband internet access as we thought throughout the state, and especially here in Hermiston. And this one was just to advocate for more state funding for this, not only for actual infrastructure, but also for technical assistance. Some of the federal grants that cities can be eligible for require that you have a plan, a broadband plan. So trying to get money to help cities do those kind of planning documents, things like that, would be a great benefit to cities. And this is one of the items that I put. I did it with red or green, yellow, and red, or green, yellow, and blank, basically. This is one of the second tier items that I thought were really, it could be helpful for the city, but it's not as important as the two that I mentioned at the beginning.
Byron,
Yeah.
I know I've seen this list. I don't know if I looked at it in LOC or you sent it to us, but do we have a copy of
Yeah,
that?
it should be in your packet. There should be a list of the names and titles, and then kind of an analysis of what the impact Hermiston has.
Thank you. Royce, out of page 54.
Okay. So page 54 of the council packet. And it doesn't have all the detail that came out with the leagues packet, but if you have any questions, I have the leagues packet here to answer. So item C is advocating to give cities an option to choose a even more strict energy efficiency focused building code. It's called the REACH code. And they would be able to choose, cities would be able to choose between this code and the state building code. So it wouldn't be a mandate to do something, but it would allow cities who want to encourage more energy efficiency to have that option. They currently don't. We can only use the state building code. Then item D, COVID-19 economic recovery investments, and this really is, this is just what I've been really mentioning a lot in my memo, and that is just continue to seek funding that cities can use to help businesses and other impacted groups within the community to recover from the pandemic. And I think this one the league's been working on now, and so this would sort of be a continuation of that. Again, and then item D is one of my yellow good items, but maybe not the most important here. The next one is item E, digital equity and inclusion. And this is just to support legislation and policies that would be more inclusive and equitable for digital resources. I think that's another thing we found with the pandemic, that not everybody has access to a computer and not everybody has access to Wi-Fi at their house. And so we're trying to make sure we offer ways for all of our residents, all the kids in school to have that type of access. And this was discussed by one of the committees that I sat on this year, the Telecom and Broadband Cable Committee. And we talked a lot about, this isn't necessarily always a city issue, but it's something we can be in a coalition and help support schools or help support other groups to find ways to make this go, this technology to reach further. Healthcare is another area where this can help rural and smaller communities have better access to health care, those kinds of things. Then we have item F, expedited siting for shelter and affordable housing. So in the short session earlier this year, there was a bill that would basically have totally taken our authority as cities to regulate where emergency shelters or homeless shelters could be located. And it ended up not passing because of the walkout at the end of the session, but it was on its way there. So then in this most recent special session, there was a bill that put a short window of that same process. For 90 days, cities would have no way to stop a homeless shelter from locating, picking a site and locating. So this item is to try to preserve cities' decision-making in that process, but still maybe put some provisions for expediting those decisions. But this also would apply to affordable housing projects, not necessarily just homeless shelters. So that's another item. Item G, this is another local option, this time for green energy or renewable energy. And this would allow cities to be able to pursue and establish a community-wide green energy program. Right now, that option isn't allowed. Customers can opt in for green energy. You know, they can say that they want to buy only renewable energy from their investor-owned utilities, but this would allow an option for a community to choose that, and then an individual can opt out. So kind of taking the other approach. Again, just another option, not something I saw as super important for our community, but would allow many communities an option. So then the next one, item H, housing and services investment, supporting investments in affordable housing, homeless assistance, and related services. And so just encouraging the legislature to look at putting more funding in these areas. I know from listening to the leaders of our housing authority, they struggle. They feel like most of the funding for affordable projects go to the west side of the state, and we don't get a lot of chance to get those projects out here. And so getting some more funding in there hopefully would allow the east side communities to have more of a chance. But this also talks about wraparound services to help those folks to be able to build a long-term stability and to stay in housing and to build up just a little more of a long-term stability in their housing and in their other situations. So this one was one that the staff felt like could be very important for our community. It wasn't, again, at the top level, but not one of those that we felt like needed to have some extra attention. The next one is item I. This is increased budgetary flexibility during a budgetary emergency. So what this is asking for, right now, no matter what's going on, we can't spend highway dollars, anything from the Highway Trust Fund, on anything but streets. We cannot, if our police, if our general fund budget went away, we needed to fund some basic services, we could not use those funds. What this is asking for is, under certain circumstances, things like lodging taxes, things like maybe the highway gas taxes, those things, they want to have that flexibility to use them in other ways. Under, emergency, pandemic, this kind of situation really pointed that out. Okay, now item J. This is just advocating for an increase in the state's investment in key infrastructure funding. So the Special Public Works Fund, brownfield redevelopment, and the regionally significant industrial site loan program. Unfortunately, we see that these are some of the programs that are potentially on the chopping block as the state looks to balance their budget in the upcoming special sessions, but, you know, again, this is the yellow one for me. This is something that, you know, we have lots of infrastructure needs. We could always use assistance from the state. Unfortunately, I don't think it's realistic at this point in the state's budget. All right, now, K, local climate action planning resources. This would be the league advocating to assist cities and counties in being able to get some funding to adopt climate action plans. And again, just an option, wouldn't be a requirement. An option for a city to seek those kind of assistance. Item L, local energy generation project support. So pursuing funding to help projects where you can generate energy locally. So things like small scale hydropower and conduit hydropower, methane, biomass, solar, being able to get some funding for technical assistance, helping communities get a project up and running that could be viable. There are some larger grant dollars out there for some of those, but it's hard to get in line. The utilities have really worked on those quite a bit. So this would just be a way to help cities try to find ways to use these alternative energy sources. Item M. This is another one the staff felt like was something that was important to look at. So this would provide the legislative authority to let ODOT delegate to us local speed setting authority. Right now, we have to have ODOT do a study if we want to change the speed limit off of certain levels inside the city. And so it would be nice if we could do that on our own. It would still, what they're proposing would still follow the same rules that ODOT does, but that we could take that action on our own without having to have ODOT tell us it was okay. So we run into this a lot and could see this being just a way to kind of be more responsive to our residents and be able to help them when there's issues and things change so quickly. ODOT doesn't always move so quick, and so being able to address challenges in our own community would be helpful.
Byron?
Yes.
Do other states allow local
Yes.
jurisdictions to set their own rules?
Yes.
Thank you.
That this is the most control I've seen the state make on local speed limits at any state that I've worked. So the next item, and long-term transportation infrastructure funding, support expansion and consideration of revenue-generating options to fund multimodal transportation infrastructure. You know, this one, I think it's great. It would be nice if we could get some additional funding for transportation, and so I put it as yellow, but again, I'm not sure this is a realistic. We just got a large transportation package 3 years ago out of the legislature, and you know, the way the gas tax is being impacted by the lack of travel right now, it's just, this isn't a realistic thing, but it'll be a nice thing, I guess. But then item O is low-income energy efficiency and affordability programs. So this is just getting some more programs or funding for programs to help those low-income residents with energy and heating assistance. You know, the CARES Act actually put quite a bit of funding in these types of programs. And we were also really blessed as a community that Amazon Web Services also made a large donation to UEC and HES that will help with the energy assistance. So again, this is good, but we have been blessed with some other items lately in that area. So then item P, marijuana tax local rate limitation increase. Right now, there's a 3% cap for local marijuana taxes. You know, the cities that have this would like to be able to go higher with the rate. The league did some comparison. You know, some of this states are, you know, 3 and 4 times what Oregon charges as far as tax rates. So at this point, this wouldn't impact us because we have not allowed the development of marijuana businesses in the city. The next one, Q, mental health service delivery. This is another one that the staff really felt like should really get a look at as far as one of those that should be included. You know, with all of the talk we've had about, you know, police interactions and so forth, this is probably one of the areas that could have a huge impact on improving how that works. You know, I don't know what the right solution is, but something where we're trying to help people deal with their mental health challenges in different ways and not having to be with the police officer as the first responder to something like that. So that's one that the staff really felt was important. Item R, municipal broadband and pole protection. This is a defensive item that I think the league has had for many years, just trying to make sure that we don't let the cable companies and other companies tell us how to use our streets and right-of-ways. The public owns those, and they should be used to benefit the public and not just to earn profits for specific companies. So this also extends now as we start talking about 5G and cellular development. You know, they want to use our poles. Those of us who have our own electric poles, not every city does, but, you know, so just making sure that we stay vigilant and not allow those things to be overtaken. Next item is S, new mobility services. So just trying to get some additional funding to help those who might be have a little bit of challenge with their transportation. And this isn't just maybe somebody who might be disabled, but also trying to encourage ride sharing, van pools, all those types of things to try and relieve some of the tension that's on our transportation system throughout the state. I think we have this one again. We don't have as much of an impact as maybe the major metro areas, but still, in the future, that's something we will need to have to be watching and making sure we address. The next one, item T, photo enforcement, safety cameras. This is just supporting the continued ability to do this, and then basically allowing all cities to do this, which is red light cameras and speed cameras. Right now, let's see, it's Albany, Beaverton, Bend, Eugene, Gladstone, Medford, Milwaukee, Oregon City, Portland, and Tigard. So it would be nice if they could, you know, they've tried it out in these cities. Let's expand and let other cities have an opportunity to do this. Again, this is one of the things that we've talked about from a staff level is this a way that we could, you know, we feel like we've done a good job of using technology to extend our staffing. Could this help us do that on the law enforcement or the traffic enforcement side? To have some of these in targeted locations. For sure, the red light cameras, the research shows it's very clear if you put them in, they make the intersection safer. And so people they start to act differently because they know they're there. So, all right. Item U, property tax reform. This is, I think, something that's been on the league's agenda for, I don't know, decades. And yeah, so this is, again, I sat on the taxation committee as well, and we tried to word this as broadly as possible. So, you know, support the big, let's go after the big thing and put something on the ballot as a constitutional amendment, or if there's some smaller steps that we can make that are statutory, you know, let's try to do those too. Try to build coalitions. That was another thing we spent a lot of time talking about, is how we can try to get some of the other government agencies that rely on the property tax, how can we get them involved. So that's one that I think is key. I'm not sure anything miraculous happens in this particular year, but I think we always have to keep our foot on that gas pedal, or else we will completely get forgotten. So, all right, V, reducing wastewater impacts from wipes and other non-flushable items. I asked Mr. Schmidl about that, and he felt like there might be some other items that might be more important than this on his impact on his wastewater system, but it wouldn't hurt. So this isn't one of those that jumped up to the top of our list.
Needles.
W, right-of-way franchise fee authority preservation. Again, this is similar to the one that came earlier. We need to protect our ability to control the right-of-way. And, you know, we don't need to be unreasonable. And, I think that the cities we could agree to do some things to make sure that we're not holding people up, but we also can't give away a resource that it belongs to the public, and we need to make sure it can be used by anybody who might need it. Okay, item X, state highway funds formula. Consider opening the state highway fund distribution formula to allow for additional percentage to cities. This was not, I put it because it'd be nice, but this isn't the way, I don't think this is the way we should go about getting more money for transportation funding. Because we would just get the counties opposed, or the state's going to be opposed. This isn't the way to really get more money for the cities. Item Y, tort liability reform. So there's some areas where there's some additional risk exposure for cities, where we need some strength. The CIS has really been active in advocating for this item to try to clarify things. One of them we talked about a couple meetings ago, the Boise decision related to homelessness and sleeping on public property, those types of things. But there are other, COVID has also given a number of thoughts about what liability the cities have, and how we just need some clarification. So that's what they're. And then item Z. So water utility rate and fund assistance. So this is, a lot of the efforts have been made to assist electric ratepayers who might be struggling paying their bills or have a struggle in the wintertime. But nobody has really addressed the water side of that and being able to help people have water. That's what this item is trying to get at, is trying to provide a mechanism where for low income or others with struggles that they can get assistance with their water bills, that type of a thing. We may have found a way to kind of work within the current guidelines, and I can talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the CARES funding that will be coming to the cities. But again, this is the league trying to work on something that utilities around the state can get some help that they can pass on to their ratepayers. So that is all. Those are all the items, A to Z. And I'd be happy to talk about or address any more details.
So does the administration have a top of the board? They're going to
We didn't get to 4. We had the 2 that are the green, A and U. And then we had a number
Can you be
of...
more specific? A was the beer tax.
A was the beer cider,
U was
U
the
was the
property.
property tax.
Okay.
And then we had a number of yellow items
What about the mental health one? That one?
Mental health, that was one of the top mental health, yellow items that we talked about. Local speed setting authority was another one that we felt like would help us. And then housing and services investment, H. Was just trying to get more money into affordable housing and other services to help those who might need some extra help.
Is there a way in H to define larger investment outside, the I-5 corridor, the Portland metro area, so that it's spread throughout the state? I mean, was that talked about in that conversation?
I wasn't on that committee. I think that came out of the Community Development Committee, and so I don't know what they discussed.
Because Hermiston did have an investment here recently.
Stanfield got a recent project.
This project here.
Oh yeah, that one was a number of years in the making, so we really hadn't counted that, but yeah, we did get an investment completed. Yeah, that's another one that's kind of ongoing.
Which one did you say, Jack?
The right of way. Yes. Those, I feel like are hard to put as the priorities because the league's always going to defend that. So trying to find some other options might be more meaningful.
Council, Dave, what were your thoughts?
Question on item A. You mentioned, I think the words you used were that the middle was $30 a barrel. And I'm just trying to determine, is that a mean average or is that more of a median value when compared, it just happens to be the middle number in the range of numbers? Or is it the total average of higher numbers?
I think it's the median, so it's right in the middle of the number of states.
That's a tough one. I agree with it as a potential revenue source, but it gets a lot of pushback in the state, especially in Oregon, where we have a lot of craft breweries, craft beer distributors, that sort of stuff. And there's not, is there a specific allocation in the beer tax to support things like mental health?
There's treatment going in there, and that was one of the things that the league staff talked about is if we were to agree to, say we want more money to go to this treatment as well, but we do need to see an increase so that because there's both impacts on treatment as well as public safety. So
yeah, because we brought this one up before. It's been on the radar for a while.
yeah.
I know when I was on the Finance and Taxation Committee, we brought this up as well, that it was incredible. It's like 6 cents a case or a 6-pack of beer.
Yeah, and one of the things they said about the past when the leagues brought this up, they brought in the wine distributors as well, and that always seemed to kill everything. So this time they're trying just beer and cider. They're going after wine as well.
Are there others the council particularly had interest in, support of? David?
I noticed that digital equity and inclusion was left as gray. That's of particular interest to me, and I'm just curious why you didn't apply more value to that. When we do have B, which is the infrastructure and technical assistance funding, I would think that those would potentially go hand in hand.
I guess I see our role, I agree, I think they would go hand in hand. I think I just saw our role more as an infrastructure provider and that we can support and be in a coalition with the education side as we look at how do we get more technology in the hands of everyone. And so, either way, I think those are both kind of two sides of the same coin, essentially. So either one I can see. Because, our efforts with our library and those types of things are another way to try to get at that digital equity
Yeah, I do like the idea of the whole technology investment and safety as well. The red light cameras and speed cameras. That's something I've advocated with the chief for several years that we need to look into as a community and take advantage of some technology advancements to help decrease investment and or maybe reassign police officers to other tasks, so that, largest cost of us doing business is human resources. So that may be a potential way for a community like ours to expand our ability to manage public safety with technology.
Yeah, our one, a lot of our discussion in the staff level kind of revolved around the political appetite for that, I guess, in our area. When ODOT went through and redid a number of the lights through town, and put up cameras that only activate the lights. That's their function. And we had a lot of calls at City Hall about, hey, are those red light cameras? And so, I think it's a tool that we could use and would be valuable, but is it something our community would accept? I think that's a little bit of a challenge.
I think the ability to be able to use something like that in ad hoc as needed, not a permanent site, but a temporary site, would be more suited to our needs.
Potentially, that intersection at Elm and 395 really, because of the development that's happened around it, it almost makes that the only way to try to regulate that, because we can't locate an officer in a way that they can effectively enforce on that intersection. So some targeted things like that, I think, are really something to use.
Okay.
But don't you have to post, they have signs?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
They have signs.
How do you know
Say.
She just heard about it.
I read that.
No, we would have to do that, but I think,
Well, I mean, that's talking to his.
oh yeah, if we were to do some, like, I've seen some cities in other states use them, they might move them from this residential street or this collector street to this one, and so they do have to sign them and notify people that it's there, but I think the whole idea that they would allow a certain group of cities to do it, it would be nice if it was an option for us to consider. And then we could see what the community's appetite was for it. And right now, we don't even have that option to have that discussion.
Manuel, you have a question?
Yeah, I got a question. I think you mentioned the Wi-Fi. The city of Hermiston, they can provide free Wi-Fi for the citizens of Hermiston to help the students. It looks like this good. How do we help?
Yeah, I mean, we could look into that, and some of this funding potentially could be helpful to do that. One of the things that Nate Rivera and I have been doing as just kind of a research is to look at what it would take to put some investment in city broadband. Connecting our buildings, our facilities, maybe even connecting all of our parks with a broadband network that could then support a robust Wi-Fi system that could be available in all those places.
We used to have something like that here years ago, but granted, it was put in by the CSEP funds, and I think it was maintained by IRC. But yeah, we were nationally recognized because we had that Wi-Fi cloud over all of Hermiston. That was in the early 2000s, if I remember correctly, in 2000s.
And that's the cable providers and other people often get very upset at cities when they operate broadband networks. You're getting into the market, you're taking business away from us. Well, a system like that, if the city had owned it, we could have made sure that it stayed in place and that we could continue to invest in it and make it work. And now, it has essentially been sold off in pieces, and we we actually are just gonna become the owners of the cameras on the street, on the highway, but that's essentially the only part that's left.
And I think my argument against the big corporation is poor people don't have money to pay for cable, okay?
Right, and I think, I don't know how soon we'll be back to the council with an in-depth discussion about this, but I think in the next 6 months we'll be in front of you to talk about, well, this is what it could look like if we started to go down that road. It's not cheap, and so these funding pieces would be nice to help us look at how that would work.
I'd also like to show support for Section Q, the mental health service delivery. I think especially in an area where oftentimes we're very short-staffed or there's very limited resources, and this was even pre-COVID, and that's very hard in the social services field when you're chronically understaffed and have to attend to a clientele that's very high need. And so I think the investment of more mental health services in our area, and even to help and reduce police interaction, would be very beneficial in our area. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the ones the staff would put up there in the top 4, as we talked about it together.
Is the rest of the council supportive of that one as well?
Yes.
We have a consensus around that?
Absolutely.
Okay, that should be top 4.
Yeah, because looking at situation, we gotta come out to conversation, some of the inventing of this, a lot of that.
Yeah. Manuel's point was a lot of interactions with the police department to have mental health consequences.
Over the years, mental health funding has been cut back so much. And we used to have, when I first started in law enforcement years and years ago, we had
Decades.
decades ago, over 3.5 decades ago. There was, we had the Eastern Oregon State Hospital, we had the Eastern Oregon Training Center, we had a plethora of mental health options available to us in this area. And over the years, the funding for all these things has been cut back so far, and then that part gets laid upon the police officers to deal with, as a first responder, as opposed to, you're dealing with somebody who's having a mental health crisis, and you have to deal with them as a law enforcement mode, as opposed to a community health worker type mode. And it's both dangerous physically and stressfully as anything that they do.
So, agreed. Beer tax, property tax, mental health. What's your number 4? Yes, Lori?
I missed what was said about half. The
Expedited housing or site and shelter. I feel like that one gets too close to the line of really taking away local control.
Okay.
So, they've already done it on a temporary basis.
I think the league's position on that was more protective.
Right, and I think they're okay. We'll just have to say the cities on the west side are a little more lenient on how that stuff works. For us, it means a lot to be able to say where facilities get located and how that process works. And I think sometimes the other cities might be willing to give that up a little bit more than we are.
I think a lot of the League of Cities pushback has been, we had mother-in-law's expansion.
ADUs, accessory development.
Yeah, accessory development units. Then we had expansion of duplex, triplex, quadplexes in residential
And single
zoning,
family.
took away our control there.
Yeah.
This was another look at, overreach by the state to take away our local control. And I think that's where the protective mechanism comes into place, is the state now telling communities what they should look like.
Right. I guess my 4th would probably be that combination of broadband infrastructure and digital equity inclusion. I know they're 2 separate items, and I don't know. Nothing stopped us to send 5 to the league. They can do. Right. it's a rule,
Like
but
that.
kick us out of there.
What about J, the infrastructure financing?
I think it's important. I think it's just not realistic at this time with the budget situation. So picking something maybe a little different that could address an initial real need right now.
I agree. Yes.
I have a question on section P, the marijuana tax local rate limitation increase. I know it has no effect on us, obviously, we don't have any of those in our community or any shops in our community, or businesses, I should say. I know this was brought up when we were doing our goal setting session about, potential ways of trying to find increases of revenue, obviously pre-COVID, and now we find ourselves in a situation where, the budget might be stretched to it per se. So I guess my question is, at this point, what would annual marijuana tax revenue look like? Are there any cities in the area that are comparable, like Pendleton, to see, what exactly that revenue that is being missed is?
I mean, we could look at what Pendleton is generating. I don't think that'd be a realistic picture of what we could generate. I mean, I don't know if it could be more or less, honestly, just because of their situation and ours. But we could look at that as an option. Frankly, that was adopted by a vote of the people, and so I think it would need to be referred back if that were to be changed.
Absolutely, I agree. I would never want it to be, coming from the council. I think the vote of the people is the most appropriate.
Other comments from the council about I guess one of the things that wasn't listed on here, but I think the legislature should take up is some sort of COVID liability reform. Trying to ask the legislature, either through their emergency meetings or in the next legislative session, but to provide cities and businesses that are following CDC guidelines protections against lawsuit. And I think as a state, that's going to be incredibly important to protect those, frontline workers, those industries and businesses that are keeping our state running from being sued or frivolous lawsuits. And so,
Yeah, that item Y it doesn't address it in the kind of the title language, but that is some of the discussion that they wrote up in that from the league, and so that could go that way. That item Y would be considered in that.
yeah, I would actually like to see us be a little bit more aggressive, and maybe I'd be happy to write a letter or support a letter from the council if they supported it to our legislators, both Representative Smith and Senator Ansel, asking for conversation at the state level to look at some liability reform as it evolves around COVID. Council has some thoughts about that?
It's a good idea.
What's that?
I think it's a good safeguard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, businesses, cities too, could be significantly hammered in the situation if they were sued, and they're already struggling to keep their heads above water. And so having some protections in place, I think, is super good. Other comments about LSC priorities? Okay, so it looks like beer tax, property tax, mental health, and the last one was broadband support, something like that.
There's two of them. One is E, and the other is B. B and E.
Okay, so reel off the letters that were.
Okay, A, U, Q, B, and E.
being kind of-
Yeah, those are both broadband, digital equity service.
Those are my choices.
Yeah, I like this. Yeah, I like the one about housing as well, investment in low-income housing and supports. I think that's important as well. I think the council supports the broadband one as
And it's hard to just pick four, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we need to address.
And these aren't the only four that LOC is going to work on. though.
Right, these are just be kind of the priorities that they, put out there, but they'll work on these other issues as well, so.
Throw the other one in there as number 5. All right, anything else? Or-
No, that's all I have.
Okay, well, let's take a 10. All right, I'm going to call the July 27th, 2020 Hermiston City Council and Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order with a declaration of a quorum. All members present. Good to see everybody this evening. Good to see the audience here this evening. Please join me in the flag salute.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to remind all counselors that you need to turn your microphone on and actually speak into your microphone so that the public can hear you, and it can be recorded because we are being videotaped online. For those members that want to participate in their government, they can still do it from their house. And so there is an opportunity to watch live stream at the City of Hermiston's YouTube site. And so please turn your microphones on and speak into them. Mr. Smith, do we have some changes on the agenda this evening?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay. But we do have, we're going to change one of the zoning amendment hearings that was advertised.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be postponed to August 24th, 2020.
And actually, we're going to change the date it's postponed to September.
Okay, so it'll be postponed even longer, September. So if you are here to talk about the temporary emergency shelter proposal that's in front of the city, the reason it's being postponed this evening is it hasn't finished its review at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is still reviewing it and probably will come back with additional recommendations to the council. And so before the council considers it, they want to hear what the Planning Commission's recommendations are, so we'll, postponing that. But if you did plan to come this evening and speak to that, we'd be happy to hear you. We do have a citizens input section on non-agenda items. You can speak at that time. And I believe, Gary, they can still include that testimony in the hearing. Is that accurate?
I'm sure that would be possible.
Okay. So if you did want to speak and not have to come back in September and say the exact same thing, you could speak this evening and we could include that in the public hearing record. We also have an executive session this evening, Mr. Smith.
That's correct.
Okay, and that'll be after
That'll be at the
end of the meeting. Okay. So we're at the first opportunity for citizen input. If you would like to speak to anything that's not on our agenda this evening, I would encourage you to come up to the microphone in front. Limit your discussion to not more than 5 minutes. State your name and address. Direct your comments to me. And we do have some kind of COVID cleaning preparations. So if you speak, you've got to wipe the microphone off afterwards.
Correct.
And if you're standing up there, wherever you touch, that sort of thing, just be courteous to the next person after. Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on non-agenda items?
Hi, my name's Rayanne Blake. My address is 1698 Diagonal.
Could you say your name again?
Rayanne Blake. I wanted to talk a little bit about stepping stones. Since the zoning commission meeting, stepping stones has become the topic of conversation on multiple Facebook pages. I have seen people opposed to the idea, but I have seen a large amount of our community members in favor of a sleep center for the homeless in Hermiston, Oregon. A concern that has been voiced and continues to be voiced is the proposed site's proximity to the Theater Lane Sports Complex. I have spent an incredible amount of my time thinking about this issue and talking to the mothers of young children that I know about the specific park and how they feel about a sleep center being located near it. I get mixed responses and mixed emotions every time it's discussed. There are those that feel the sleep center will ruin the park and for the children in our town. And there are those that feel that with the proper management, stepping stones will have no large impact whatsoever on the park. My personal feelings is that our proposal is for the sleep center to be open during the late evening, night, and early morning, which is when all city parks are closed. This limits the contact between the potential guests of stepping stones and the children playing at the park. We are also willing to have a security camera aimed towards the park so that someone is always watching the activity there. As a board, we have committed to cleaning the area and the neighborhood around stepping stones routinely and thoroughly at least once a month. I can't deny that there's an issue with drug paraphernalia and trash in the area around Harper Road, but I can, with the support of our board, commit to being good neighbors and offer to help clean up an issue that is already there. When I drive around Hermiston, I see there are several areas in town that the homeless population currently seem to be drawn to. Mackenzie Park, Victory Square Park, Oxbow Trail, and every single entrance into Walmart. What these sites all have in common, except for Walmart, is they offer shade and cover to the homeless during the day. The covered area at Mackenzie Park offers outlets for charging devices, which is very convenient for our homeless population. The Theater Lane Sports Complex lacks these amenities. It's in the direct sunlight most of the day and lacks power. It doesn't even have a drinking fountain, which is why I believe the homeless people are not already there, and it will not draw them to it once stepping stones is established. They will continue to go to the areas they are currently inside our city. In an ideal world, we would find a cost-effective site with all the perks of the proposed locations, with no neighbors, business owners, houses, schools, preschools, or parks anywhere near it, that is centrally located for ease of access to the homeless population. But sadly, I've yet to find a spot like that in Hermiston, Oregon. What I believe we have found is a spot that fits some or maybe even most of the criteria I feel would make a place like Stepping Stones successful. I don't want to dismiss the concerns that I've heard about stepping stones, but I do want to work with everyone to find a solution to those concerns and satisfy the majority of its issues. I have told everyone that I have met with that I'm not married to the Harper Road location, but I am married to this project. And in order for it to get off the ground, we need the zoning amended to allow temporary emergency shelters in Hermiston, and we need to be willing to make a conscious effort to come up with solutions instead of only pointing out the potential problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to offer your comments?
Yeah, I'll pass it around. I'll be right behind.
Thank you for cleaning up, too. Are there others that would like to speak this evening to non-agenda items? Come on. You don't have to raise your hand and be recognized. You can just step on it. Let's be the teacher.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Lloyd, 1600 West Orchard Avenue. Once again, I stand before the City Council as the chair of the nonprofit foundation Stepping Stones of Hermiston. At this time, it is not my intent to present the pros and cons of our specific project, nor am I speaking to the potential site that we would like to lease for this project. I am speaking to the need as a community to address our responsibility to the homeless population of our area. Yes, I'm speaking about those people. I visited today with some individual who talked a lot about those people. You know the ones I mean, the violent ones, the drug users, the alcoholics, the sex maniacs that live only to cause crime and disruption to our community. I'm talking about the transients that have raped and murdered individuals in nearby Pendleton, and the ones who walk or lounge about leaving their trash, wine bottles, and used needles in all of our parks and alongside our roads and steal from our local businesses. I'm talking about the ones who have never wanted to follow the rules and don't want to conform in any way to societal norms. And if there's a sleep center, I'm talking about the ones who will get on their cell phones and call all their loser buddies to come to our gentle, quiet, crime-free city and ruin it for all the other citizens living here. Because these are the homeless that are being rejected as not worthy of any assistance from the others in the community. As we speak of those people, let me also reflect on some other individuals that we're not considering. The 19-year-old young man who has lived in foster care his entire life, and when he aged up out of the foster care system, he had no place to go and no support system in place to help him. The 31-year-old mother and child who came regularly to the warming station because there was no low-income housing available to her and Martha's house was full. The two men that had full-time jobs but were separated from their wives, and the salary from their full-time jobs went to supporting their family that they weren't able to live with at this time. The families sleeping in cars, the high school students who are couch surfing, the mother of 3 who had a good job but had such enormous medical bills that she lost her housing and had no place to turn, and so many more. These are all real people who live in Hermiston, who are citizens of Hermiston and have need of our assistance. We need to do better to help our fellow community members. We need to stop the finger pointing and listen to each other. We need to make sure we truly know the facts. Right now, it's not about stepping stones or its possible location. Right now, it's about changing zoning. Sorry. The proposed zoning change would allow nighttime temporary emergency shelter to be allowed in light industrial zones. Right now, Hermiston does not allow for any such shelters, which limits the extent to which our law enforcement is able to roust homeless individuals from camping overnight on public property. See Boise versus Martin. Allowing a temporary nighttime shelter would help empower our law enforcement to be better able to address nighttime homelessness. The Walla Walla Alliance for the Homeless offers a successful template that other communities can follow. While currently open 24 hours a day due to COVID-19, the Walla Walla Sleep Center was designed to be a nighttime-only shelter, which is what we are requesting Hermiston zoning to address. Here are some of the positive results that Walla Walla Alliance has reported. 1, 85% of the guests at the Sleep Center have been Walla Walla residents. There have been no large influxes of transient individuals coming from long distances to their sleep center. It has not served as a magnet. 2, there have been no violent physical confrontation between guests and area neighbors, and confrontations on site have been largely verbal. 3, they have had a high success rate in placing sleep center guests into long-term housing of their own. 4, property values in the area have not decreased. 5, by law, homelessness cannot be criminalized, so citizens have the right to sleep on public property if there is no alternative. A zoning change for Hermiston is needed. 6, the Walla Walla city officials, police department, downtown merchants, and community citizens all tell of the positive effects of effective management of a well-run temporary sleep site. 7, Walla Walla states that a well-managed shelter is much safer for the community than the unmanaged encampments, such as we see around town, that are endemic with a population of persons experiencing homelessness. 8.
Your 5 minutes is up.
Okay, I've got 2 more sentences.
Make it quick.
There have been very few reports of thefts of neighboring property, and now is the time for the city of Hermiston to take positive action to provide support for those within the community who have needs. I respectfully ask you to consider all the facts and not make such an important decision based on emotion and societal pressures. Thank you.
Sorry, that little tone you hear is Lily's phone. We've got a 5-minute timer. Sorry, turning my phone on, Mayor. That little tone you hear is Lily's phone. Normally we have a timer in our old system, and currently we don't. So she's using her phone. So if you hear that little beeper, that's your 5-minute timer to Others that would like to speak this evening? Non-agenda items? Come on.
I have one. Concerning my name is John Carter. My address is 1313 Southwest River Hill Drive.
Yeah.
And my concern is the restrooms at the Riverfront Park.
Okay.
I walk there quite often. There's quite a few people that go there and visit the park. And we don't have any restrooms. So is there any way possible we get a party, a porta potty or something?
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Mr. Smith, can you explain what's going on down there at Riverfront Park and what we're trying to do to address that?
Because of the flooding that we've had a couple of times this spring, we're trying to clean it up, and the long-term goal is to relocate the bathrooms and parking and everything so it's less impacted by flooding. But I thought we did have a porta potty down there, and I'll make sure to talk to the park director about looking at getting something down there. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Others? Going once? Gone? Okay. Consent agenda items, we have A through D. Are there any on the consent agenda that the council would like to pull? Seeing none, can I get approval for the consent agenda items A through D?
So moved.
I think it was Mr. Primer.
It was.
Thanks for speaking into your mic. It's been moved by Councilor Primer, second by Councilor Myers, that we approve consent agenda items A through D. Any public comment on those? All right, seeing none, can I get a roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Now on to item number 9, public hearings. The zoning amendment hearing for 157.005, 157.153, the junkyards. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest from the council? Seeing none, hearing guidelines will now be presented by the staff.
Mr. Spencer.
Spencer.
The City Council is holding a public hearing regarding amending the Hermiston Code of Ordinances, Section Title 15, Chapter 157. An amendment is proposed to add junkyard to Sections 157055B and 157056B, uses permitted conditionally in the light industrial and heavy industrial zones, and add Section 157153, secondhand dealers and junkyards. The secondhand dealers and junkyard portion of the code is being repealed from Chapter 113 and added to 157. City Council will take public testimony on this issue and make a decision at this meeting. The process will begin with the staff report. Following presentation of the staff report, the City Council will take public testimony. Testimony will be received by supporters of the proposal first, followed by neutral testimony, and then opponents of the proposal will testify. The City Council requests that all people wishing to testify approach the microphone and give their name and mailing address before testifying. People wishing to testify should limit testimony to not more than 5 minutes unless a longer period is provided by the City Council. Written testimony will be accepted from all parties. After everyone wishing to testify has had an opportunity to speak, the City Council will close the public hearing and enter deliberations. Once the public hearing is closed, no further testimony will be received.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. We are now going to open the hearing and have a city staff report.
Yeah, tonight you are considering part of the systematic update of all of the city ordinances that we've been undertaking for about 18 months now. Working with attorneys, we determined that the existing junkyard rules did not necessitate an entire chapter and would be better located being moved into the zoning ordinance. So the proposal before you is to repeal Chapter 113 in its entirety, it's 2 paragraphs in the code right now, and insert those provisions into the zoning ordinance. This process is slightly different than what we've been doing with the other ordinance amendments, because those have been purely administrative on the part of the City Council, but inserting this language into the zoning ordinance requires compliance with ORS 227 regarding land use planning in cities, so this housekeeping is a little different than the council's been doing before. No substantive changes to the junkyard or secondhand dealer policies are proposed, but the structure of the code changes from a standalone chapter to existing in several points in the zoning ordinance. They boil down to a definition for secondhand dealers is added to the overall definition section at the beginning of the zoning ordinance in 157.002. For reference, secondhand stores are permitted outright in the C1 and C2 zones, but there's no definition for those in the code now. So the Planning Commission has developed a secondhand dealer definition. The ordinance also makes junkyards uses permitted conditionally in the light industrial and heavy industrial zones. Currently, there's no district which permits junkyard, but they are regulated. And so this rectifies that conflict in the code. The development standards that were in Chapter 113 for junkyards are then inserted into the zoning ordinance's supplemental provisions in 157.153. There is just a little bit of housekeeping that's included with this amendment. Previously, any retailer that was selling secondhand goods had to enclose their storage in a site obscuring fence, and this is amended to exempt anybody selling used cars because they are technically secondhand items, but display of wares where it's actually visible is a crucial part of the business plan. So ordinance exemption is carved out for those. And then there's one other piece of housekeeping, which is the removal of junkyards from our non-conforming use area in 157.190. This is an outdated provision. It required all junkyards to be fenced within 1 year of adoption of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance was adopted in 1994, and all of the junkyards that were in place and are impacted by those non-conforming use standards are either fenced or out of business. So this section is no longer applicable, and we recommend removing it from the code. And finally, the Planning Commission has reviewed these amendments over 2 meetings in February and March, and they recommend that the council adopt the 2 ordinances as proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. We will now take public testimony. Same rules as we had before. We're going to start with the proponents of this zoning amendment hearing. Please come up to the microphone in front, introduce yourself by name and address, try to limit your conversation to less than 5 minutes, and direct your comments to me. Are there any proponents of this? Seeing none, are there any neutral parties who wish to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents or remonstrances who wish to speak? None. Okay, we will close the hearing. City staff will now present its findings of fact.
On pages 29 through 31 of your council packet, you have the draft findings of fact that have been reviewed by the Planning Commission. They detail the compliance with the statewide planning goals as well as the City of Hermiston standards for amending the zoning ordinance. No changes are proposed to the findings at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Council, any comments? As I understand this, Mr. Smith, is part of our process of updating code in the city. This one required just a special hearing because of the change that was being made. It didn't reflect anything else that's going on in the community. It just happened to be coincidental that this was the time to talk about junkyards.
That's correct. This was just, initially we had it planned to come up right when COVID hit in April or late March, and we just postponed it until now. So.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the findings of fact? Been moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Harden, that we approve the findings of fact as presented. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. That will come back in front of the council again.
One of your next items will be the ordinances that are adopting.
Right, okay. Coming back really quick.
Very soon.
All right, so the zoning amendment hearing 157.005, as I spoke to earlier, has been postponed till September, September City Council meeting. We don't have a date yet.
No, September 14th, and we would ask that you make a motion to that effect.
Okay. Can Can I get a motion to postpone this hearing until September 14th to give the planning commission additional time to give a recommendation?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councilor Gutierrez, seconded by Councilor Bremer, that we postpone this hearing until September 14th. Any public comment on that? Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Ordinances and resolutions, ordinance number 2300, dealing with junkyard and secondhand dealers. Mayor requests first reading of the ordinance be read by title only. Calls for a roll call.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Luisi.
First reading of ordinance number 2300 by only reading the title. I have trouble with that. As follows, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 355 passed June 12, 1957, section 5 of ordinance number 1632 passed June 22nd, 1987, and Chapter 113 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances dealing with junkyards and secondhand dealers. Mr. Mayor.
Mayor requests that the ordinance be put on for final adoption at this meeting, that the second reading be by title only. Calls for a roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Luisi.
Second and final reading of ordinance number 2300. An ordinance repealing ordinance number 355 passed June 12, 1957. Section 5 of ordinance number 1632 passed June 22nd, 1987. And Chapter 113 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances dealing with junkyards and secondhand dealers. Mr. Mayor.
Can I get a motion that ordinance number 2300 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption by the City Council?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Harden, seconded by Councilor Trimmer, that ordinance 2300 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption. Any public comment on that? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Ordinance number 2301, amending the Hermiston Code relating to regulations of junkyard. Mayor requests first reading of the ordinance be read by title only. Calls for a roll call. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Luisi.
The first reading of ordinance number 2301 as follows. An ordinance amending sections 157.002, 157.055, 157.056, and 157.190, and adding sections 157.153 to Chapter 157 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances relating to regulation of junkyards.
Mayor requests that the ordinance be put on for final adoption at this meeting, that the second reading be by title only. Calls for a roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Luisi.
The second and final reading of ordinance number 2301, an ordinance amending sections 157.002, 157.055, 157.056, and 157.190, and adding sections 157.153 to Chapter 157 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances relating to regulation of junkyards. Mr. Mayor.
Can I get a motion that ordinance number 2301 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption by City Council?
So moved.
Second.
And moved by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Bremer. Mr. Second.
I guess so.
That ordinance number 2301 be adopted and become effective 30 days after adoption by the City Council. Any public comment? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. On to resolution number 2161, installing stop signs at West Joseph Avenue and East Oregon Avenue.
Yes, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, this resolution before you this evening is seeking the installation of additional stop signs to make four-way stops at the intersection of West Joseph and Southwest 10th and at East Oregon Avenue and Northeast 6th. In your agenda packet, there is a map of the two general neighborhoods where these are being proposed. Just for general information, however, both of these areas have experienced some relatively substantial increase in housing development over the past several years that has led to an increase in traffic through those neighborhoods. At the intersection of Joseph and 10th, in that immediate vicinity since 2015, there have been at least 44 new homes built in that area since 2015. And the area of Northeast Oregon and East Oregon and Northeast 6th, since 2013, there have been approximately 80 new housing units built in that area. We've received citizen requests for installation of stop signs in those areas. Staff has reviewed those requests internally and with our engineers from Anderson Perry and Associates, and we're recommending that those additional stop signs be installed.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. We also reviewed this at the Public Infrastructure Committee meeting this evening. And in reviewing it, I think the Public Infrastructure Committee meeting was members were in support of the amended or the suggested locations of these stop signs as well. They seem to be becoming increased thoroughfares for the increased number of houses that are going into the neighborhoods. And so for the safety of those neighbors around there, we are in support of that recommendation as well. Any other comments from the council about those two locations? Can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2161, laid on the record?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Barone, seconded by Councilor Harden. Missed your opportunity, Councilor Barone.
I passed.
That we approve Resolution 2161, laid on the record. Any public comment on that? Seeing none. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Library basement contract award, Mr. Smith.
Yes, so as we've been working through this process of potential new city hall, one of the next steps was to look at providing a temporary location for staff and also looking to assist the library in long-term improvements. So we worked with Architects West and worked on a way to kind of completely remodel the basement. So that would include relocating the bathrooms, opening up a large space that could be in the future used for stacks and other library materials to be available there. And but in the interim, it would serve as office space for city staff and where we can look at our utility billing operations. So we went through the bidding process, and the bids came back. You can see in your staff the council report. We received 5 bids, which was a great turnout, really, frankly. And the low bid is Nerve Construction here locally at $910,000. The architect's estimate was at $925,000, so we're a little bit under that, but kind of in the ballpark. And so at this point, staff is recommending accepting the low responsive bidder and looking forward with that project.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So ended up having to do some HVAC issues and increase some EDA access, kind of change the cost estimates that we originally were talking about.
Yes, it did. When we went to look at how the sidewalks were functioning in the back, where we're going to improve back entrance, that they currently don't meet ADA slope requirements, and then making any changes requires you to go, basically, we have to go the length of the building to fix the slope requirements.
Okay. So it'll be more accessible.
That's correct.
And then improving the HVAC, a better heating and air conditioning system for
Right.
much longer time.
Yeah, and it was kind of 2 issues. One, where the current system is reaching the end of its life. It's been there since the building was constructed. But also we're changing the use, so opening up more space, that type of thing. So a slightly different system will function better under those circumstances. So both of those items contributed.
And I know we talked too about expansion of the front entrance and the facade of the front. Are there ways to add that on should funds become available at some point?
Yes, that was always kind of in a planned phased approach. So this is phase one, and that's what we entitled the bid documents. But we'll look at phase two as we get into the city hall construction, then we'll start planning on phase two.
Any other comments or questions?
When
Yes,
does
ma'am.
this project get underway?
When? I'm hopeful by mid-August they could be under construction. I haven't had 100% confirmation from the contractor, but they were in my office late last week trying to start making preparations. So. We did give in the contract, there's 120 days. We initially looked at 90, and all the contractors at the pre-bid meeting said that's a little too short. We've been having trouble getting, for example, HVAC equipment and so forth with the COVID restrictions. And so could you make it a little longer? So we looked at 120 days.
Great. And a responsible bidder that is also local?
Yes, we were really excited about
Yeah,
that.
that's exciting. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2162 and lay it upon the record?
So moved. Second.
Mayor, I forgot one change. There is a copy of this resolution in front of you. We added a phrase. We just missed it initially in section 1. It just says that subject to the notice of award process. That's the process we have to follow to award contractors. So it's highlighted in yellow in the copy that's on here.
Second. As noted.
Thank you.
So it's been moved, I think, by Councilor McCarthy, is that right?
It was a tie.
It was a tie, okay, we'll give it to you. As amended with phase one, subject to notice of award process, seconded by Councilor Bremer. Any public comment? Seeing none, can I get a roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes unanimously. You know, Ms. Myers, it works better if you turn it on. The red light.
Mine's green.
Well, I mean, this red light, I can see your red light. Okay, so we have a Eastern Oregon Trade Event Center report.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Davis is here.
All right.
I'm here to report that it's hot.
Seconded.
Yeah. I think the last time I reported was probably, I think, in May or April, about the same time. All the COVID stuff kind of started kicking off. We're starting to see some of the impact of what was happening. Today, we're probably lost about 40 plus cancellations and events and activities up there. Not good. Not a lot we can do about that. A lot of those are rescheduled for 2021, which is good, but in the meantime, it's lights out. So, but with that also being said, we have been fortunate enough because we are kind of a dual facility out here for the inside and outside. And outside, we've been doing very well. We've been holding our own. We kind of paid attention or whatever. To date, we've had 19 barrel races since May 15th, when the governor first was able to cut us open. We kind of went under the auspices that we're an outside recreational facility, since equine are not considered recreational activities on your taxes. Can't remember not considered recreation. So we've been doing that. We've had 14 ropings up there, so we've been doing that. We're not getting rich at those, but we're holding in. But the flip side of that is we've done almost 10,000 individual barrel races up there, runs per person, which is really good. I don't know if anybody here in the Pacific Northwest is doing anything, because we're getting a lot of those people are coming here because they do like the reputation of us having the best ground in the PRCA, and so that helps us out a little bit on the reputation to do that. We are looking at Wednesday, there's going to be an opportunity, I'm going to a meeting on Wednesday, to probably pick up 2 more big, large events. 2 4-day barrel races, which will come in September, beginning of September, Labor Day weekend. Hopefully, if we can get that bid on that one. Then we have locked in a big team roping, will be the next weekend, and then following that, another big barrel race, which is the Northwest region for barrel racing, UBHA. So we'll be able to bring in 500 plus to each one of those events, so that'll be nice. Moving forward, not gonna lie, it's a little scary. Once we get into the second week of October, which will be our last kind of outdoor event, that kind of when that season kind of ends, we're gonna struggle. Right now, depending on what's happening, I right now don't have anything on the books to the end of October. Outside of some smaller events, we've tried to make ourselves available to groups such as, what is it? Some of the groups that have to do meetings and they need social distancing, so we made ourselves available and affordable. Porter Utility, thank you. Who's been coming and doing their monthly meetings out there where they can use the big room, they can do social distancing, continue to do their meetings face to face. So we're getting a little bit of that type of business. Once again, we're not going to get rich out of it, but some business is better than no business. So moving forward, as we get into already December, we have a couple of Christmas parties and it gets really slow anyways. December could look really miserable, and I'm not so sure what November is going to look like from here on that as well. We still have some things on the books, but as long as the governor keeps, I should say that, because I think she's doing a lot of the right things. As long as these decisions keep being made as we go forward, impacts us directly. So we're going to do our best to try and keep business in and get business where we can and keep our lights on as much as possible and hope that things start picking up. So that would be my report if anybody has any questions.
Al, could you walk them through the process, that you use to make sure people are safe when
absolutely.
Ropings and team?
Absolutely. When people come to the building or if we're outside, we stop everybody at the gate. For our outdoor barrel racing stuff, we stop at the gate. Everybody fills out a 4 or 5 questionnaire. Back in May, we kind of watching. We knew the governor's going to make some decisions, and so we went right after the health department asked them. We submitted a plan to them and told them what we're going to do. We've been doing that continuously. As you come to the gate, we take your name, address, phone number. We take your temperature. We write it on the paper, put it in the file. Hang on to it. Actually, I think we only really have to hang on to it for 2 weeks, but we still have the ones from the very first one. We have had some people who have come through and then, they said they've been exposed. So we have some doctors that come through and some nurses that come through and they'll say they've been exposed. We take the temperature, we make sure they're clean as they can go, and we move on. We haven't had anybody go back. To the people's credit that have come, they've been very open to it. They're very happy to come. One of the sidebars from the whole COVID instance is that I've always said we were a good location for these type of events, but it's really hard to take stuff out of people, get people out of habit and routine. Traditionally, there's always been competitors for us. Has been Moses Lake has an indoor facility at their fairgrounds. Boise's been there. Eugene's been there. A lot of those aren't open and not functioning. Because of that, we've been able to pull people in from Seattle, Portland, Boise, Lewiston, Idaho. We have people coming in from Montana. If we get these bigger ones in, the more people we get into the ground, the more exposure we get. People have been really liking it. We've got some really good partners. Some of you may know Global McMillan when they originally were planning to put up the facility. She came to a lot of the meetings. She pulls a large crowd and she comes and she's come a couple times and she brings her crowd with us, so that's been helping us keep our stuff open. The advisory board, we're still working forward, we're moving forward, hopefully. We still got some stuff, I'm kind of a impatient guy, but I'm going to cover it as fast as I'd like to see us move forward. But we're moving, and I think we're closer to some plans and maybe some submissions. We've get some smaller stuff done. And as I told you back in, May or whatever it was, we did get a PPE grant, which allowed us to keep some people on staff until June. When the government changed some changes, and I know you guys have done some of that. Those rules are on the fly, they're changing all the time. We were able to keep some of those on until almost the beginning of July. Because the reason it came on, and because of the time period when the tax period fell, I mean, it was a big mess on it. But the government said, hey, you know what, our bad, we can keep those guys on longer, so maybe keeps them on longer. So we still have some guys that, you know, we don't have time working, but we're plugging away, and we're actually be going forward. With the fair, they're planning on doing a livestock show of some sort, in some nature. But once again, that goes under the category of what guidelines will we be operating under. I did not see today, I thought there was going to be a press conference today that we're going to roll back to stage one. But that happened, I get away from the media all day. Okay. So we're still looking to see what that does, and a lot of that is in the control of the state 4-H office. That's a 4-H activity. We don't really have a whole lot of pull and yank on that. If the state 4-H office says no, then we're out in the cold again. So we'll see what happens with that. But right now, we're looking moving forward to having that, and people who have bought animals and stuff at that, there'll be an opportunity for them to continue that process.
Thanks, Al. I know, not able to do as many indoor events up there, but I appreciate your leadership and creativity in figuring out how we can do some outdoor events. Those people still come into our community and stay in our hotels and purchase gas and eat in our restaurants. And I know Ranch and Home is always busy on the weekends that we have barrel riding events. So I'm sure the stores are happy to see them as well. One of the questions I had, during some of the Oregon legislature's emergency sessions, they have funded venues. Is EOTech potentially eligible for any of that funding?
We're looking into any of those kinds of options. We're not 100% sure yet.
Yeah. So I think, obviously revenues at this venue have been significantly impacted in the community center as well. So just like a lot of the other venues across the state, it's made a significant impact on the financial success of those venues. And I think EOTech and the Hermiston Community Center, though, different exceptions.
There has been some conversation. We have a weekly conference call with other venue works at facilities around the nation. We're the only ones who've actually been operating. If you look at the Toyota Center, Corey, who's my face over there, they're shut till November because they don't have the outdoor facility. There's one other facility that they operate out of all their facilities, which just held a big livestock show. It's just funny that that's the one thing that people are like, hey, we're going to show, just tell us how to do it, and they come out and do it. They just finished the big livestock show, but that's been the only thing they've been able to do. So as far as venues being operating, there aren't very many of them who are up and operating. If they are, they're probably doing something very similar to what we're doing. So we'll do our best to try and keep going.
Any other comments, questions from the council? Thank you, Al. All right, CARES Act funding proposal, Commissioner.
Yeah, so a portion of the CARES Act funding has been allocated based on a formula from the state, passed through the state from the federal government to come to local governments. And we don't, it's still going to operate on a reimbursement basis, so we will be needing to spend money and then seek reimbursement from the state, but they've tried to assure us that will be expedited as much as possible. But what I wanted to talk with the council about tonight is sort of a plan and an outline of how we might, different programs we might try to establish and work to assist our residents as well as businesses in Hermiston that have experienced difficulties during this time. And so what I'd like to just kind of walk through what we've proposed and then we can talk about it. So we have $16,000 worth of business support that we gave $16,000 worth of grants in partnership with Umatilla County that the state would not initially reimburse us for, so we still have that we can seek reimbursement for that we've already spent. We've done an estimate on direct costs through December 2020 at approximately $100,000. Again, we've had a number of employees, especially in the police department, that we've had to pay overtime to help them, allow them to quarantine and so forth. So those are some expenses we just estimated at that point. Then what we'd like to do is propose $100,000 in water, sewer, garbage assistance programs. I've had a preliminary conversation with Capco. They're interested and think they could help us administer that program. And so that's kind of the tentative plan. They already do a lot of that type of work on the electric side. And so they think they could just kind of alter their program a little bit and be able to help us administer these funds. Then proposing $25,000 for electric assistance. We did already get a large amount of money from the Amazon program, and so, but we felt like we still needed to just put a little bit towards that. Then also a $75,000 rent or mortgage assistance program. Again, had the same conversation with Capco. Sorry, I can't keep fogging up my glasses. I can't. So they can also help us administer that type of a program. They do that already. They actually got CARES funding to do some of that. So they're sending me a proposed contract of how we could work with them on that. And then we're proposing $184,000 in business assistance that would be paired with $379,500 from Umatilla County's allocation of CARES funds that would go. Again, Mark Krosick has been working with a group across the county so that we can have one program for anybody in the county for these business assistance funds, and we would go through that process to get those out to businesses that are in need. And then the last item, proposing to contribute $40,000 to the Oregon Worker Relief Fund that Councilor Barone talked about a few meetings ago, to help some of those in our community, some of the farm workers particularly, that might not qualify for other assistance. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. The business assistance program that you mentioned, it looks like Umatilla County is going to match or work with us on that. So that'll be close to $590,000.
Right. What they've done is they've taken they did an estimate of their costs through the end of the year, and then they took the remainder of that and allocated it to this business program, business assistance program, and then they split it based on population across the county. And so this would be our portion of that, and then we would be able to offer all of that to businesses within Hermiston.
And is that different from what GEODC is also doing with Business Oregon?
That's correct. It's in addition to those funds that GEODC is doing.
I guess, Mr. Krosick, in your conversations with working with the county, and I guess I'm not sure who's going to facilitate those funds, but
well, the county will.
the county will.
Right. The idea was we didn't want to replicate processes across the county, and they have graciously accepted, once we decide on what the application process is, to do that county-wide for cities as well as the county. And then depending on what monies are available, they will make sure this amount of money comes back to the Hermiston area according to that application process.
So I guess the one caveat I'd like to see part of that conversation, just from personal experience, originally when the PPP funding came out, this was expected to be a 6 to 8 week shutdown. Mm-hmm. It's turned into a 6 to 8 month shutdown. Mm-hmm. So PPP went to businesses to help them sustain revenues for potentially 6 to 8 weeks. I've also seen in some of the newer applications, like through GEODC, that if you've already received funds from the CARES Act, you cannot apply for these funds. So I would like to take that caveat out of there. There are businesses that have been shut down much longer than 6 to 8 weeks, and for them to continue to keep their doors open, it's going to take another infusion of funds to help support those. And so I think that's in personal opinion, just a bad priority. I obviously would love to help those businesses that haven't received any funds as a first priority, But there's still a lot of businesses out there that it's going to take some infusion to, live through the rest of this year.
There's been a lot of discussion about folks that have already gotten money that we don't want to not include them, but those firms and businesses that haven't gotten anything, that will be part of the product qualification process.
Because I saw that in the GEODC funding, and I think they've got close to $500,000 as well through Business Oregon. That specifically says people that haven't got funding. So there's already a funding stream out there for those folks. I don't want to eliminate those businesses that maybe have got some CARES Act funds but are still struggling.
Absolutely.
Ms. Smith, I think this is a great list. Can you explain the water sewer assistance one? That's not an across-the-board assistance. They have to apply for that.
Right, and in talking with Capco, we can set that parameter at wherever we like. We can set it at 100% of the area median income. We can go, a lot of their programs are like 60% and 80%, but we can, they see there's some gap a little bit above. The people, they have okay jobs, but they've been impacted, but their jobs are just good enough that they can't qualify for some of these things. So that's a gap that I think we want to try to fill and help them through this potential utility assistance program.
I think there's probably been very few people that haven't been impacted by this. And so, trying to create an opportunity to share some of that with everybody, not necessarily everybody, but a majority of folks within our community that may not necessarily qualify for low-income assistance.
Correct.
I think would be important as well. And water and sewer assistance seems like a general one that would help a lot of folks.
Right. And, businesses could also apply under those instances as well, as long as they had it. We just would need to work out the details with how that program would work.
I'm sorry.
The $100,000 continued direct cost goes to City Hall. City?
No, what we would do is we would make a contract with Capco to.
She's talking about the other one up above.
Which one?
I'm sorry, I wanted
The
to.
direct cost.
Oh, the direct cost. That's potentially for any city department. So, for example, we've had a lot of overtime because of.
Yeah, it comes back.
Right, it would come to the city directly. Yes, I'm sorry.
So it's COVID-related expenses.
Right. COVID, so if we're buying more PPE or if we're making any other changes to buildings, things like that.
In terms of the business assistance, what strategic framework, or I guess, is there in order to make sure that all businesses have been reached? I guess I understand what you're saying, Mayor, but at the same time, I think maybe for some businesses it might just be a little bit more, there might be a couple more barriers. So I guess, is there a more strategic framework for these harder to reach businesses, like maybe Spanish-speaking businesses or things like that?
Well, I mean, like we did initially with the county program that we worked with them, is we called, we dedicated city staff to call and then let them know about it. So we'll do whatever we can to reach out. We can utilize the Chamber's Hispanic Business Network and different things like that, but we can try to reach out to as many people as we can.
I think there was an initial partnership with the chamber and the county in calling on local businesses.
Right.
The city staff actually sat down.
Yeah,
and
city
called
staff and chamber staff.
in a bilingual format. Too,
Yes.
right? So I think some sort of process like that is important. I agree with you. Other comments on this? I do see continued conversation amongst cities and counties about the frustration that they're having with CARES Act funding. And there was an article, I think, in the today that came out through the Capitol Press. And our local counselor, Paul Chalmers, was quoted in there from Hamilton in regards to the CARES Act funding and how its distribution was originally intended to be a 55-45 split. And that's not how it's ending up. And wanting more accountability in where the state is actually spending those funds. Is it being spent in local communities, or as we saw at the last emergency board meeting, on pet projects, that are specific to legislators in their districts? And so I agree with Councilor Chalmers and all of there was 16, 18 different organizations that are asking the question about transparency in the allocation of those funds. It's $1.6 billion, and where is that money going? So I support that conversation, continued conversation as well. We've talked about it here several times, but I think a lot of people are starting to ask that question as well.
I just want to add on, I think, when we're looking at a budget or how we allocate funding, it shows a huge priority of where the city's looking at, or, even in personal budgets, whatever you allocate to something shows where your priorities are at. And I'm really grateful that we did allocate money to the Oregon Worker Relief Fund. We do have a unique challenge here in Umatilla County of having disproportionately a lot of our Latino community members affected by this. And I think this is a way of also not only solving the issue, but also meeting the issue with compassion. It's a unique solution, but not only that, there's a lot of farm workers or people that work in these, these fields of work that for them it's very difficult. If they get sick, they can't just, take the day off or take 2 weeks to quarantine because maybe they don't have the status to be able to take those days off. And inadvertently, because they want to do the best to help their family members do their best to survive, they inadvertently affect other people or other community members as well. And so I think this fund is a great solution, to meet an issue of compassion, to help, people that can't quarantine because of, financial reasons, to be able to do so. So I think this is a big gesture by our community and knowing what's important in our community and, finding creative solutions to tackle difficult issues.
Very good. And I appreciate the city's perspective at looking about how we can impact the most amount of members within our community. The city, there are some communities that are spending all of this internally, and the city has chosen to take a position where we're going to spend 80% of it and giving it back to our community that's hurting right now. And so I appreciate the community, or the city's perspective on trying to get additional resources into the hands of the working people within our communities that are, day-to-day struggling. So I agree with Councilor Barone as well, being creative, trying to figure out ways that we can support more and more folks within our community. Any other comments from the council? Can I get a motion to approve or direct the staff to modify the budget and expend CARES Act funds? Second. Been moved by Councilor Barone, seconded by Councilor Gutierrez, that we direct the staff to modify the budget and expend CARES Act funds as presented. Public comment? Seeing none?
Mayor, may I add one real quick? Just, as these are the categories that we'd like to use, but there may be, for some reason, some of those don't get expended as quickly as others. We have until the end of the calendar year to expend these. So, for example, if we end up not needing $100,000 to meet the expenses of the city, we can move those monies into some of these other categories that we can outreach. And same with some of the other categories. If they need to slide within these, we would try to do that and just try to get as much of this money out the door as possible.
We'll get a final appropriation at the end of the year. What that looks like.
Yeah, we can, once we've worked through all that. And we will need a budget amendment to do this, so we will have that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we definitely want to have that $540,000 coming back into our budget. Any other comments from the council? Can I get a roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes unanimously. City Hall funding agreement with Umatilla County.
All right, so we've been working with Umatilla County to assist us in the construction of the City Hall. The agreement that's before you is a result of our discussions with them. And the summary of that is there's about 5,000 square feet in the lower level of the proposed City Hall that would accommodate some county staff operating out of their health department and a few other staff that currently have offices on 4th Street. And with that, they would contribute $3 million minus the value of the Cook building. So they would give that to the city. We think we will be able to exchange that with the owner of the Lanham building that's next behind City Hall. And so, but in addition to that part of the financial contribution, there would also be a maintenance fee that they would pay on a schedule of years 1 to 5, $1,800 to $2,000 a month. Years 6 to 10, $2,700 to $3,000 a month. And then in years 11 through 16, $3,600 to $4,000 a month, and that would be then renegotiated at that point. And the reason there's a range is because right now we haven't completely finalized the amount of square footage that we would be proposing to lease to them. So with that, and they would be using their Lamb Weston Enterprise Zone dollars to make these contributions for City Hall.
And that's the Lamb Weston agreement that we originally had with them with the water tower.
Correct.
This would be funds beyond that.
Right.
Okay. Any other council questions? Yes, Ms. Davis?
I noticed it says termination in the event the facility is not constructed by October 1, 2022. Is that enough time?
Yeah, in fact, I extended it 6 months past what they originally proposed, just to make sure that I think they would work with us if we were in progress, but yes, I think it's time.
The whole building is constructed, the whole City Hall?
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the City Hall funding agreement with Utah County?
Second.
So moved by Councilor Burrow, seconded by Councilor Davis, that we approve the City Hall funding agreement with Utah County. Any public comment? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Smith, legislative priorities.
So we spent the work session hour talking about these, and I think the consensus out of that discussion is the top 4 were a beer and cider tax increase, a property tax reform, the mental health service delivery improvements, and then broadband and digital equity kind of as one item. And then I think, Mayor, you threw in the 5th of the housing and services.
Housing. Yep. Any other comments from the council? No, we had an hour to talk about it already. Okay, so for those of you that are present, we have a work session this evening to talk about LLC priorities. League of Oregon Cities, every long session comes out with a list of priorities that they would like to see worked on in the benefit of cities. They put together committees that review recommendations and proposals and come back with language to the overall city population and ask for them to vote on the top 4 priorities to focus. They have many focuses that they will continue to focus on, but these are the top 4 that the city of Hermiston has identified that are priorities for us that they'd like to see our legislative lobbyists work to try and find some resolution on with our legislators. Beer tax, property tax, mental health support, broadband, support and equity. And then the 5th one was support for affordable family or affordable residential and family housing. Okay. Any public comment on those? Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So can I get a motion to approve those top 4.5?
I move.
All right, the move by Mr. Gutierrez, seconded by Mr. Primer, that we approve the 4.5 that I mentioned. Now any public comment? All right, we'll do the roll call again.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, motion passes unanimously again. All right, goal setting report update, Mr. Smith?
Yes, so in your packet, on the last page, 72, there's just a summary of the goals and actions that were adopted in our goal-setting session in February, which seems like just
Yesterday.
ages ago. But just to summarize a few highlights, I think that we've really made some good progress. We have a consultant hired to assist in doing a community visioning project. And it's Sarah that we work with on our goal setting. And we really started planning. And one of the things I want to ask the council is we need some names of people who can be on a steering committee. A group that represents our community in all the different ways that the community exists in the various groups. Another item a little further down is tools to improve Hermiston neighborhoods through code enforcement, beautification. We had hired a full-time code enforcement officer, then she left, but we did hire, just this last week, hired another code enforcement officer full-time, and he started work getting up to speed. We're also, in that process, we found a number of ordinances that we need to clarify even more than we thought. We had kind of reviewed them and got them in good shape, but there's a few other things we need to get in place. So we're working on that process. Conduct a housing market study to understand the best investment options for public investments. We've started with state funding to do a housing market analysis that will help us in this effort. We also one of the tasks was to analyze a business case for trying to do more for senior projects, 55 plus living accommodations, and we'll be bringing something to you a little bit later. And then support the completion and build out of South Hermiston Industrial Park. We're continue to answer any questions we get from the Economic Development Administration. So far, they haven't said no. We still think they're going to say yes, but I can't give you that for sure yet. And then a number of the infrastructure projects we're moving forward. We've started final design on the Gear Harbor intersection alignment, and we've acquired the property that we'll need to build that project, and we'll be moving forward next fiscal year with that recommendation. Finish improving the community's access to justice. We've done a lot of improvements to the court administrative processes, and Molly and I are right now evaluating some new technology solutions for the court that will improve things as well. And we hope to bring to you later, maybe later this fall, a proposal to take back the 8 misdemeanor adjudication that has been going on at circuit court. And the others, one difference in our goal setting this year is we set some goals in a little bit further out, not all just 1 year type goals, and so you'll see some of those we'll be working on them later on next year or in other years in the future. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Thank you for the update, Mr. Smith. City committee reports. We had a public infrastructure committee meeting this evening. Do either of you two want to talk about it?
Putting in stop signs.
What's that?
Putting in some stop signs.
Okay, yes, that's true. We approved that this evening. Stop signs. What else?
We were
talking about the infrastructure from the pipes and such for the sewer lines. I'd like to see the way they're doing it.
Can you talk into the microphone, Doug, sorry, so everybody can hear you?
I was really impressed with Tyler, or I lost the name.
Yeah.
Anderson.
Anderson Perry.
Anderson Perry.
Yeah.
I don't know why I lost that.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the fact that they went through and did an analysis of most of the pipes. I think all of them are done at this point. It will make it a lot better and easier for people to be able to go through and determine when do we need to be getting into the ground to be able to dig and take care of those things. It makes it a lot easier to kind of determine where and when it needs to be. I was impressed with that completely.
I also was impressed, with the improvements. I can't remember exactly where the one in question was, but with one of the stations that used to serve the Arvin Larby School and now only serves a minor amount of customers, reallocating that to not only be more efficient, but also safer for our staff to actually service when the need arises. And they took a lot of that kind of thing into account, which I thought was very important. And made me just feel a whole lot better about the process.
Yeah, we hired Anderson Perry to do a wastewater collection study, identify all the wastewater pipes, lift stations, bottlenecks, problems within the city. And they've identified 37 different basins that have 9 separate lift stations. And looking at all of those lift stations, they went through and looked at them to make sure the pumps were working, that the pipes were accurate, and that the electricity was still functioning and appropriate in there, and what it was going to take to improve those. They looked at the entire integrity of the system, over 20,000 linear feet. I believe they TV'd, reviewed, and identified, kind of the bad spots, looking for intrusions, like trees, roots that are growing into pipes through breaks, looking for sags and actually broken pipes, and so identified some common problems and some segments that need to be impacted and fixed. Just kind of like we did with our water system, we went through and identified the current age and infrastructure of our system and analyzed how healthy it is. Same thing with our wastewater system. And then trying to put that in a priority as far as improvements for the future in our public infrastructure plan. Mark's going to be bringing back to the Public Infrastructure Committee a final analysis of this. They aren't completed yet, which will attach dollars and cents to all of this, as well as a 20-year plan, so that the city can plan for these expenses going into the future. We talked a little bit too about safe routes to schools and making sure that we looked at potentially 10th between Elm and Diagonal as potential. And then we also looked at the section on the west side of 11th, between Highland and Orchard, working with ODOT and improving the sidewalk. We've had a couple fatalities along that street in the last few years, and trying to put some sidewalks in there and working with ODOT to work with the Safe Routes to Schools program.
There was also discussion in that portion of having one of those rapid flashing crosswalks.
Correct, rapid flashing crosswalk, that's right. So hopefully, because there happens to be a sidewalk from the housing development right there, just kind of dumps out into 11th Street. There's no sidewalk, there or crosswalk, and so having a safe route to school, crossing farm, kind of like we have by the hospital, to improve safety of that street. Yeah, it was kind of a urgent priority. Other comments from the Public Construction Committee? Other committee reports? Yes, right.
We have the recreation projects fund going to be the 29th. Postponed it a couple of funds just because it was crazy with the application and COVID. For those in the audience that don't know, this Project Recreation Fund is funded by TRT funds, which are, it's transit room tax. So people that come to hotels and stay there, there's a little percentage of tax that's used for this fund, and this fund is purposed to try to create recreational opportunities here in our area, so people can come and visit and use those same hotels and, you know, participate in our community, contribute to our local economy, etc. So there's a couple of projects lined up for the 29th. We're kind of nervous though, just because we're hoping that we can actually get to have these activities and get to have these events this next coming year. So that's something we're discussing, but we have a good pool of applicants this year, so hopefully they can all participate and actually do the event that they're planning this next upcoming year. And besides that, Hispanic Advisory Committee, I think, is postponed, so I believe that's it. Okay.
Yeah, we had the Public Safety Committee meeting tonight, so at the same time as yours, we had a pretty big turnout. Most of a very significant portion of the Hermiston Police Department showed up, as well as several members of the public. During that time, they recognized the investigations team as their team or unit of the quarter, of the second quarter, doing some great work there. Per their lieutenants, the reason none of them were available is because they were all busy working cases, so just throw that out there. They've been working pretty hard at getting stuff done. They've had a 40% impact on their personnel due to COVID. So that the police department's been hit very hard with this. And they've made great strides in keeping the public safe while keeping themselves safe as well. They should be commended for that. Some of the things that they're bringing forward, there's, you know, the county is in the process of bringing in a new radio, the county radio district is bringing in a new radio system. Hermiston will be, the city will be the last of the major agencies to receive their radios due to just the order of things. But as Chief Edmondson pointed out, at least by that time, most of the big kinks and bugs will be worked out by the time they get to us. So we're really fortunate in that respect. But at the same time, it does make us last. So he gave us a breakdown of their big three. You know, lots of. And we've had in 2020 so far. They've had 2 homicides, 4 reported rapes, 5 robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, arson. Most of this stuff is down. Unfortunately, the homicide, which is a big one, is. 2 so far this year, so that's a big one, but you know, it's not something we can plan for. So, but they're doing their best to do with what they've got. They're currently also working towards accreditation. And we're going to be moving towards the Oregon standard for accreditation at this point. One of the things they did bring up was in last year, correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers, Jason, 1,230 arrests, which only resulted in 23 actual uses of force out of those 1,230. Is that a good number, Jason?
That's correct.
And so 23 uses of force and 12 shows of force. That's where if officer has to remove his weapon or hit somebody just because of the situation, but it's not actually used. So, from what I know of law enforcement, that's actually pretty good numbers. Very low numbers, and that's very helpful. At the end of the deal, there was a good discussion. Some members of the public got some information that they were requesting, and we were able to, Jason was able to provide them with information as needed. And so other members of the public also brought forward how helpful members of the department were and provided them with information that they needed for their research. So all in all, I think we we had a really good discussion, and there was a lot of good information provided, and a lot of good help. So,
Very good. So I'm privy to that report as well. I want to applaud the people of the community, frankly, the residents, just from the standpoint that, there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety and people being cooped up right now in our homes, and it could be a time to act out or cause harm or, act out your frustrations. And for our statistics overall to be down during this time is just a statement of our community and our community's goodwill and looking out for each other and taking care of each other. And so I want to applaud our community and the public aid and safety officers out there on the street every day too, and facilitating them. Any other committee reports? Yes, Mr. Rowe.
Oh, I forgot to mention, even though we don't have a Hispanic Advisory Committee, we do have a vacancy as presented in the consent agenda, so we're looking for an additional member on the Hispanic Advisory Committee if anyone's interested.
Perfect, thank you. Any other committee? Okay. Mayor's report, I've got several things to mention. Larry's not here, but Funland has a groundbreaking on Wednesday. It's kind of a hush-hush, not a big celebration groundbreaking because of the COVID situation. But because they actually had delivery today of parts of the park, we actually received that in our community today with the help of our friends at Walmart. They brought some of the equipment in today, and it was delivered, I think, Public Works. They're housing it until it can be installed. But we'll do a small groundbreaking ceremony, do a photo op, and the actual construction will start this week.
Yeah.
And so you'll start to get to see that project come out of the ground. We'll actually have a more larger celebration, hopefully, at the end of construction, which I think is proposed for October-ish. Assuming that we can get all the parts and pieces. That's been a little bit of a holdup. Colorado, I think, was one of the places that we were trying to get stuff from, and they were shut down, so they weren't doing any construction. So if you want to attend, it's 12:30 Wednesday. So we only have a few shovels and socially distant and masks and all that sort of stuff. But people can watch from the outside if they'd like. Elections, Lily, when is the applications due for those? August 25th, 5 o'clock. So if you're interested in city government, there are 4 positions, I believe, at large that are up for election this year. I saw 3 applicants so far for those 4 positions. And so I encourage you, if you are in the community and like to help raise your community and make decisions for your community, to apply for election. The COVID thing continues to be a problem within our community. We happen to be the #1 community zip code in the state again this week. We talked about it the last time we were here. We were #1. So it's not the stat that I want to be #1 at necessarily. Fortunately, hospitalization rates are pretty low still, and the recovery rate is pretty high. So have a lot of exposure, and so continuing to wear masks, I think, is still important. There is some mixed message out there about whether it's good or bad, but it makes us feel good that we're doing something to help our fellow citizens and ourselves, to protect ourselves from COVID. And so I would encourage all of our community members to continue to follow the CDC guidelines of wearing your mask, appropriately distancing, washing your hands, and if you're sick, staying home and not going to work. I also want to say thank you to the frontline workers that are still out there every day working in this situation. Even though we've got this big surge, still stores are open, still able to get food, still able to get gas. Businesses are still operating, and I appreciate those people out there making our community work and run every day, including our staffs here in the city. It's also hot. So protect yourself, stay cool, stay hydrated. Right now, a lot of heat stuff can go badly for you, so make sure you're drinking enough water and keeping yourself cool and protecting your children and your animals and all that sort of stuff. Along with hot comes what? Watermelons, right? Watermelon season. So some of the watermelons, support your local farmers and agricultural workers. We produce the best agricultural products in the nation, and so we should support them in that. I've had some recent sweet corn, watermelon, sweet corn's coming out right now, some early potatoes and onions. Great time if you like vegetables to live in our community, because it's coming out right now and it's amazing. How about other council reports? No? Ms. Schmidt?
Mine wasn't the one that was. Okay, just a couple of items. I'm not going to name any names, but there are some members of the council that need to finish the cybersecurity survey so that we can keep our system safe. And I'm going to ask Lily to contact you discreetly, so if you need some help, she can help you with that.
Lily's not scared. She'll point you out.
And then I would also, during our Public Safety Committee meeting, a couple of our new officers were there in attendance, but I'd like to just have Jason give us the names of the new officers that we've hired.
We hired Officer Jared Flateau. He came to us from Highland Rock Police Department. He started June 16th. We hired Officer Jared Zumwalt, came to us from our reserve program. He started July 1st. And we hired Officer Shawnee Rodriguez, who also came from our reserve program. She started July 16th. So been busy at the police department.
Awesome. And I understand Gene Wilson is retiring. He's been with the department for a long time.
He's actually setting up retirement.
Right.
He's going to the Untitled Police Department to be their school resource officer.
How long has he been with us?
2 different stints, right at about, I think, 17 years.
Thank him for his service. Good to hear the new people involved. Good to hear some younger folks and some female involvement as well. So good to see our reserves actually transitioning into regular officers as well.
And then the final thing, just let the council or remind the council about our League of Cities conference. It's going to be online. So get with Lily if you want to sign up for that. It's mid-October are the dates, and test out what an online conference looks like.
Just not the same. I can't get it for that.
It is not the same.
Gosh. I always look forward to that. It's nice to see our peers from across the state talk about challenges that each of us has within our community and our struggles and also the successes. And that'd be tough to do online, so frustrating. Okay, anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's it, thank you.
Okay, we are going to recess our current city council meeting for executive session. The city council of the city of Hermiston will now meet in executive session in the conference center Rotary Room for the purpose of discussing matters pertaining to negotiating real property transactions. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602E, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the council to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are excluded. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No final decision may be made in the executive session. At the end of the executive session, the council will return to open session, which the audience may attend. The executive session will last approximately 15 minutes. We're going to recess.
really, really, really.
We are going to resume our regular city council meeting out of executive session. And is there anything else?